Hi, so welcome back. In my last video of what I was doing in the boat, I just got the headliner in and then I showed you the trim that I put in around the edges of the headliner, the sewing that I did, and glued in the extra vinyl trim to cover the cut edges. And so in this one, I'm starting to put in the cabinet work. Well, at first I had to get the cabinet work ready to be put back in the boat, and then I start installing some of it. One of the first things I had to do with the cabinet work was finish staining it. I did all of that with all the various little bits, and then I needed to get it sealed up with polyurethane. Now I wanted to get a few coats of polyurethane on it. So for all of the parts, I gave them one coat of polyurethane in the garage. Being inside there, it was a bit cool, and it took a long time for the stuff to dry, but that's okay. For the first coat of polyurethane, I did it in there. And if any of you have ever dealt with varnish or polyurethane or anything on unfinished wood, the first one is just the coat to seal it up. You give it a fine sanding after that to get all the little hairs of the wood that stand up and everything else sanded off. The first coat never gives it a good finish. And then had a really nice warm day, so I took all of the pieces of the cabinet work and spaced them out in the backyard, and gave them all a couple of coats of polyurethane over the day because they dried a lot faster outside. So then once the polyurethane had dried on all of the cabinet pieces, the next step was that I took the two parts that had doors in them, because I had previously removed the doors or anything that I installed on them so I could get them stained and sealed. So I brought those back in the shop and installed the doors and installed the latches complete with the chrome trim. First piece to go back in the boat is this end panel. Covers the anchor locker. I'm still going to be cutting some panels for the side to hide those holes. Problem was I wanted the grain running vertically, and it was a 4x8 sheet and it's more than 4 feet wide, so it wasn't much I could do about that. I also started with putting in this one side piece on the boat. Covers a shelf. And then in terms of the cabinet work, first piece to go in is this end panel again, except this time it's all going in for good. So the next thing I have to do is put the other end piece over there and then gradually start putting the cabinet together. Got other pieces all waiting for me here. They're all stained, sealed with polyurethane. Ready to go. You can see here how the edge of the vinyl on the hull is hidden by the cabinet panel on the end there. Once I had the lower part of the cabinet together, it was time to install the countertop. I had to do a little bit of trimming because once everything was screwed in place at the bottom, it sat slightly differently than it had when it was just clamped in place, but nothing major. Got it to fit nicely. Once it was fit in there and I was happy with it, I then drilled small holes and countersunk them and put small screws in there, as well as glue around the edges to glue it all together. Later, I am hoping to hide the ends of the screws and the edge of or at least most of the edges of the plywood with some teak trim. I'll show you more about that later. The next thing I had to deal with was this space between the end of the galley cabinet and the area under the helm. There was originally a shelf in there, but it was all rotten, so I took it out. So I cut a piece of plywood for it. I hadn't cut it earlier because I wanted to make sure it fit properly once the cabinet was all screwed in place. So then I test fitted in there, made sure it was all going to fit. There's a few screws sticking out, so I just notched for those. Brought it back in the garage, gave it a couple of coats of polyurethane to seal it all up, and then installed it and screwed it in place. So I have the galley cabinets partially assembled here, and now I'm trying to do all the 12-volt wiring that I need to before I go the rest of the way in. So this part is eventually going to sit in the corner, but just leaving it loose means I can get the wires over the top a lot more easily. I've put the ground bus right up here. Fuse panel is here. I've run main. I actually used some 8-gauge wire, ran it all the way back to the transom and left a little bit extra. I haven't exactly decided where everything's connected back there, but the wiring is in place, or at least run to the back. It's not tucked into the side or anything. I've just made sure I have enough wire on that end. And so I've got the black for the negative for the ground, and the red one running to here, properly connected with heat shrink and everything on the terminals. Currently, the other end of those wires is connected to a small used battery that my dad took out of one of his mobility scooters, and so that gives me some power for testing circuits. Actually, they work great for that because they're small, they're portable, and they have little screw terminals on them, so they're really easy to connect. They're great test batteries. So what I'm going to do now is I want to try to kind of rough in all of the wiring. So I've decided I'm going to use these types of toggle switches. They're a lot more compact than the rocker switches, and they're actually easier to install in the panel. Just because all I have to do is drill holes rather than machine out nice little rectangular holes. Those are just drill round holes in a straight line on a panel once I build that, and I can do that easily later on. And I have a bunch of those switches, and it's easy to get more. The switches themselves are rated at 20 amps each, so they can handle just about anything I throw at them. They are also illuminated on the end. You turn them on, nice little blue glow. Like I told you earlier, blue lights are cool. So right now I'm just using one switch for testing circuits, and then I can label the wires because they're just plug-in terminals on those. So the idea is that for any circuits that are switched, they will feed out from this fuse panel to go to the switch, and then from the switch to whatever device is being operated by it. And there will also be a ground wire running from this terminal block to the device. Now, there are some circuits that will not be switched from the switch panel because they have a switch built into them themselves. For example, this light is an LED light that I'm going to put underneath here for the countertop. It is coming straight from the fuse panel and from the ground block. So it's a fused circuit, but it has a switch built in, so I'm not going to put a switch on the panel. So I am currently trying to run all those wires in place because it's a lot easier to put wires onto these screw terminals before I put this big panel into place. If you remember from my earlier videos, there's a wooden panel that goes here, and then it's going to have the switch panel, and it's also going to have the shore power breaker panel. So right now I'm just going to try to run all of the 12-volt circuits for the cabin. Things like the shower pump and the water pump, I'm going to run wires to that location, even though I don't hook up the pumps yet. So I'm going to try to run all those wires, label them in this end, and then when I put the panel on, I can just pull those wires out through the hole and hook up the switches. The other thing that I got, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I picked up online again. This cube has 4 12-volt brushless DC fans, 12-volt fans. I'm thinking of actually installing a couple of these in one of these in the cabinet work, one down lower, just to be able to turn on to create air movement through all of these kind of hidden spaces to reduce the chances of mold and mildew and things like that, because that's always a big problem in a boat, is getting ventilation, and those fans use hardly any power at all. They're basically computer case fans, so they're designed for continuous use, and they take very little power. So I'm going to try installing a couple of those in strategic locations to get air movement through the cabinets. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's a crazy idea I had. So yeah, right now I'm just experimenting with the lighting. So all of the lighting I'm putting in the boat will be LED lighting. I have a couple of lights that I've already installed that are going to be basically reading lights above the bed. I've also got a couple of lights that have a switch built into them. One that's going to go above the countertop, and the other I think I will put in the head. Just for some general lighting too, I bought a couple of spools of this LED strip lighting that I'm trying, and it's really easy to install. We'll see how long it lasts, because if it doesn't last, I can just take it out. Where I'm putting it, it'll be easy to change later, so it's not a big deal. But this stuff is kind of cool because it comes with the wires in the end, but you can cut it to length. And I don't know if you can see, but everywhere there's these little copper plates in there. You can cut it off with a pair of scissors and resolder wires to it, and make it any length you want. So I've got one strip. This one's actually an amber color, just kind of warm lighting that I've put underneath the side shelf. I'm going to cut another length of this for the other side shelf. They will be operated by a switch there. I also have some strip lighting. It's a warm white color. I'm going to try to use that somewhere. I also have some of these little LED lights that can be used as dome lights. So for example, one of them is going to be going up here. I don't know if you remember, there's a wooden box that I'm going to put in here, and this is going to mount on the bottom of that. I'm going to put another one over on the other side, just for some general down lighting. Nothing fancy, but they will give me a little bit of light in various places in here. I think I'm going to probably put another one of these just under here once I finish up the rest of the cabinet work. Like I showed you, I have all the parts of the cabinet already sealed with polyurethane and ready to be installed. I've just stopped here. For example, this piece right here is the piece that goes up here, but I'm not putting it in because it'll make it harder to run the wires. So I'm going to wait until I get all the wires running, and then I'm going to install that as well. So feels like I'm making some progress, and it's feeling like a brighter, cleaner place to be than when I first got the thing. Of course, there's a lot more work to be done on this boat once I get the cabin done, but one thing at a time.